Okay, we made it. Hi everyone. Thanks to the audience for coming by, dropping in. I think this is going to be a really interesting panel. So maybe before further ado, without setting the stage too much, 1 to 2 minute introduction about yourself and the project you're here to represent. Maybe you want to start?
Yeah. So I'm Kunal. I work at HeyElsa as CMO. HeyElsa, at the crux of it, it's a crypto copilot which helps users to come to our platform, interact in placing English, doing all the prompts, and we reply with whatever that they want to do. Plus, we have on-chain transaction window in the ChatGPT-like interface. That is one model of it. Second part of it is composable AI layer, where we want to sort of invite other AI agents and help them with discovery, distribution, and everything else.
Hey everyone, I'm James from Mode. Mode is building at the intersection of DeFi and AI. We are building the application layer, at the data layer, and then also at the execution layer. So yeah, excited to get into it today.
Cool. Hey everyone, I'm Nima. I'm the head of AI at Eigen layer, where we focus on making it easier for people to create commitments around what AI means, how AI is produced, and how AI is consumed across all chains, agents, the whole gamut. So excited to talk about it.
Fantastic. Thanks again for being here today. Thanks for listening in. So we're going to talk about today is AI as DeFi's new interface, right? So essentially, what comes along this revolution, if you will take a look at it that way. Maybe setting the scene here in terms of definitions. Yeah. So what does abstraction actually mean? Nima, maybe you want to start in terms of your understanding. What does abstraction mean for the DeFi space, and what comes along with that?
I guess like abstraction. So like in the context of DeFi specifically, right? The protocols and like the offerings in this space can be pretty overwhelming to someone who may want to take advantage of them. So when we say like we want to abstract what those core value propositions actually are, I think it's interesting that with AI you can just in natural language talk to it and specify some preferences, and it goes and figures out the mechanics of how to get that thing done. So whether it's like you don't care about like if something's being lent, if something's being borrowed. You just have to specify like the bounds of what you're comfortable with, and just goes and figures it out, which I think like hugely opens up the space to retail and anyone who's like not intimately familiar with what DeFi even means.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Maybe James, your perspective on why this actually matters. I mean, we had retail already. What's some of the use cases that are attached to this?
Yeah, so when it comes to abstraction, we kind of think about different types of interface layers for applications. So our vision is that we won't see so many people going to like the Uniswap front end. We'll see them talking through like a natural language interface to make a trade. Or maybe it'll be like a really simple application or a vault or an agent that does like the majority of transactions for them. I think that this is kind of hard to say where it's going because we have lots of different types of users. So like if you're managing a fund and you want to put like 7 figures into an LP position, probably won't do that with natural language. You probably want to go to the protocol. You probably want to see you want to have a lot of data. You probably want to have the Aave interface in front of you. But for like users who want to make a quick trade while they're on the move, then yeah, using like an agent to do that, to execute that trade could make a lot more sense.
Your perspective? Sorry.
Are you all right?
Yeah. Kunal, your perspective on this?
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. So in my view, abstraction is where any sort of action is jargon-free. I don't need to know what is swap. I do not need to know what is bridge. I do not need to know what is portfolio building. I can simply say, oh, buy me 100 USDC worth of Eigen. My assets are on base, but I want to buy it on Ethereum. I think this is at very simplistic level. This is what I mean by abstraction. Trust me on this, we got two types of users on HeyElsa. One is those who are new to crypto, trying to understand what crypto is, whatever. And second type of users are those who already spend some time in crypto, dirt, grinding, farming, whatever, but they still do not understand if I want to interact with one of the test nets out there. Trust me, guys, we make it pretty hard as builders for normal users to really interact with us. So for me, abstraction is a layer where a user just in plain English says, I want to do this, there is an intent, and we just inference that intent and serve those users via AI agents. I think at very base of it, jargon-free interface is what I would say abstraction is.
Yeah, just one note before we I think move on to the next question, which both of you touched on was this focus on users, right? Like who's actually using this for what purpose, why, etc., right? And I guess an interesting question that comes as a result of asking that question is on what time frame do these users actually care about the thing getting done, right? If you care about some system like going off and like analyzing the financial markets over like a span of like 2 weeks, that's completely different than you wanting a trade to like settle like immediately, right? So like what are these agents actually doing to like do what you want them to do?
So maybe we can go deeper here. So in terms of what this can do, right? So instead of read, write, own, we now have this delegation, which brings alongside a lot of advantages, right? Simplification we already heard. But Nima, maybe your perspective on what are some of the advantages that this actually offers to the end user on top of maybe simplifications?
I guess like AI specifically in the context of DeFi. Yeah. So one thing that I've been thinking about that dives into intelligence capabilities is sort of there's this concept of like system 1 versus system 2 thinking, like in psychology, right? Where like system 2 is like, okay, you go and ideate or like ruminate on some idea or something for a while and then come back with some recommendations. I think the same thing happening with agents, like you just give them a task and they come back to you and like recommend you like some trading strategies or something after some time. I think could be like super interesting to make it easier for people to navigate what opportunities they have to be able to like interact with DeFi protocols across like just across chains.
James, your perspective on advantages?
So, I mean, the way I see, so this is advantages for users. So the way I see it is that like the current interfaces, yeah, they're confusing, they're hard, but the biggest difficulty is like effectively managing risk. I think agents do a very good job of that because they're working 24/7. So if you want to do something like, people mostly want to do two things in DeFi, which is like trade one asset for another asset or earn some kind of yield. So agents are very good at managing risk and earning yield across multiple protocols. So I think that's one huge advantage. And maybe it's like a simplistic agent, like a smart contract wallet that has like some defined rules and has some like off-chain models it uses. That's like one option. The other is like an interface you use to like interact with agents like that or multiple agents. Then the second is, trading. Agents are very good at like starting to be able to like forecast different situations. They can look at things like when you should use leverage, when you should be like, more risk averse, move into like a stable asset. So I think like it's still early days, but most users think they're really good at trading and they think they're really good at managing yield, but they're not, they suck. They generally lose money. Like, I think like it's like around 85% of leverage traders lose money. So they all suck, so they need help. AI and agents going to do that for them.
How does the actual interface, maybe natural language processing, whatever, right? So the actual interface, how does that transform how the average DeFi user will interact with crypto?
So I will just quickly touch upon on two things. At the very basic level, I think we are trying to look at it as from different perspective. I think abstraction also means that whatever current basic Legos are there, you get away with them. For an example, what if I can do gasless transaction? What if I can bridge from one ecosystem to other ecosystem in gasless manner, where I just simply say that, oh, I want to buy from this particular chain to this particular chain. So in our case, we actually enabled gasless transaction using Coinbase wallet. where if a new user comes, they do not even need to create a new wallet. They just simply log in with email. We create a wallet on their behalf, which they can export later, and then because it is Coinbase enabled, they can do transaction in gasless way. Even the first transaction which says that, oh, I want to buy 100 worth of crypto, spread it across different blue chip tokens, do it for me. Even if they don't have gas fees to pay for that, and if they have fiat, they can simply go from fiat to crypto in a matter of seconds. I think this is what at the low level we think it can enable.
Nima, your thoughts on interfaces? How do AI agents change the way that people, average crypto users, will engage with DeFi in terms of engagement? If not, I actually have a follow-up question because you just raised something interesting in terms of cost. So I think that will affect a lot of people here, not only interface, but also cost level. So let's say these agents that are still more or less in infancy, let's say they scale, what are the implications in terms of cost for the users, right? Will we see more trading? What will be the impact in terms of fees, all of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, agents should be much more actively managing positions than users would, because they should be able to see more opportunities, and they should be able to take advantage of arbitrage opportunities, even if they're small. An agent will see it as like an opportunity to make a transaction and do that. They're on 24/7, so yeah, they're much more active in that respect. I think that, like, yeah, we have this thesis that the majority of transactions will be done through like agents or an agent interface in DeFi in the future. So yeah, we're pretty bullish on that future.
Yeah, I think something that is gonna just completely get flipped is interactions with the long tail markets. When you have the ability to just 24/7, as you're talking about, analyze what's going on in the long tail, then the natural like progression is going to be like, okay, like how do I arb the long tail as well, and how do I do it like in a more sophisticated way? So that's going to be pretty interesting to see.
Maybe alongside that, a follow-up question from my side would be, if we think about scaling the system, right? Given its infancy, I think that where we are now, it's very use case specific, right? But if any of those use cases actually hold up and it will scale broad term, what are some of the implications that would come alongside that? Maybe you at HeyElsa have some experience with that, Kunal.
Yeah, I think before that, I will touch upon what Nima mentioned earlier. I think from a future perspective, we think that every DeFi protocol will be DeFi AI protocol. They will integrate AI in some shape or form. At HeyElsa, we are already seeing tons of demand from multiple ecosystems where they do not have resources internally and want to quickly build a basic chatbot which people can use, interact with, and do on-chain transaction. So I think the implications are pretty simple in that context, that every DeFi protocol will have AI, but at the same time, I think from cost perspective, crypto will have to build their own AI model. As of now, we are not there. We are relying on whatever centralized models that are there. And the costs associated with it, I think we haven't really rationalized that part as of now. It will take some time to get rationalization on that particular part. I think that is one of the implications I can think of.
I'm curious to hear your perspective on this. You mentioned like a blockchain native or crypto native AI model. How would that look like?
So what we are trying to do is there are very specific prompts that people want to understand, like what is blockchain, what is crypto, what is gas fees, what is faucet if I'm using testnet. So in that context, it is like, oh, I want to do basic stuff, and gradually I want to move to a place where I can do a bit more complicated stuff like staking, borrowing, lending, whatever. So I think that is where we are at in that particular. Have I answered your question or anything that you want to?
I mean, it's an open panel, so. Anyway, James, your perspective on the scalability aspect that I mentioned before, right? Maybe alongside of that, some thoughts from my side would be, or some questions that are coming alongside is, in terms of like risks, especially from a regulative side, right? Once you have especially all these AI agents released, how will certain markets think about that Your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I mean, right now, a huge amount of transactions are being done by bots, right, across Uniswap and all other kind of dexes, across centralized exchanges, and they're done by like a small group of pretty smart people. So one hope is that agents will enable everyone to kind of have access to like pro trading tools, right, where they have like much better risk models. And yeah, a normal person can deposit $500 and be able to run like super complex strategies. Like if you look at Athena, Athena is essentially like a tokenized basis trade, right? It's given people like a really simple asset to hold, but under the hood you are essentially putting on a basis trade. But yeah, so it's kind of democratized access to that trade, and I feel like there's gonna be agents, or there's gonna be hundreds of agents being built, which will give people lots of different access to lots of different opportunities that they probably didn't even know existed. So that's going to be one side, which I'm super excited about. And I think, yeah, the other side will be kind of like simple interfaces that abstract away like everything. So where you just hold USDC and then you can like move in and out of a position. I think that's going to be, yeah, so kind of like the moonshot meme trading experience you'll have for like moving in and out of agents. So that's going to be cool too.
So going back to the question of scale, right? I think the implicit in that question is probably like technical scale that you're referring to, but I think another way of looking at it is how do these agents scale trust effectively? And by that, I specifically mean when you rely on these agents to perform a lot of these financial activity, right? Over time, supposedly there's going to be this concept of reputation with agents, right? So if they build this reputation, because essentially they're like living entities, you know, in some shape or form, the question then becomes, how do they, what does trust mean for the users interacting with these agents? And then how do these agents leverage that trust to give credibility to other agents who might not be as financially motivated? So I guess this space of trust entirely gets flipped, and you end up with just like a more interesting, I guess, way of knowing who you can interact with, but it's like seeded by this financial activity at the beginning of the day.
Maybe touching upon that aspect, because I think it's really interesting in terms of risks and challenges. You mentioned trust. I think there's a few more risks attached to this that will become more transparent over time, which is security, of course, transparency actually, and trustworthiness. So maybe Nima, your perspective on these, like where are we currently and where do you see this headed?
Yeah, on trust and like how these agents can mitigate risk or even like play into risk. I think we're still super early, but one promising thing that we're seeing is how these agents can operate on both input space in terms of like what prompts they even like agree to take on, right? And maybe even like on the output space, if there's any guardrails that are, you know, verifiable, that are, you have some notion of like enforceability over, hey, like don't perform this trade under these conditions, right? So you're gonna have like various tools to enact or like realize what risk analysis even means for agents, but we're still so early.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the risk is still with like the DeFi protocols themselves, or like the centralized exchanges themselves, right? Like the counterparty risk. Like these agents, like you can put up guardrails, but like if there's an issue with a DeFi protocol or a centralized exchange, like we saw recently with Bybit, there was a hack. Like there's not much the agent can do about that, right? So I think it's about also like agents being built on better rails, which, you know, DeFi is improving, these things are improving.
Or like to build on top of that a little bit is like, can you hear me? Cool, it's tripping. So in the case of Bybit, right? Let's say the agent actually hypothesizes that might happen. Like it's, you know, prediction of the world's like the likelihood of that event actually happening is like 60%, right? And because that's its hypothesis, it allocates some of its balance sheet, right, to recover from any action it does is based on that, right? So like once a Bybit hack does happen, it can somehow recover for its on behalf of its user, right?
Yeah, but I guess it's like kind of subjective too, because as like a Bybit user, you see like the news of the hack. Maybe the agent sees that like much faster, and then it like reacts by withdrawing, maybe at a loss or something like that. But you know, it's also kind of subjective when people were thinking, Bybit 1.5 billion, they'll probably make that back in like a few months. So I'm chill with it.
But in terms of accountability, right? So if you give certain rights, you put guardrails, right, to these AI agents, and they do a bunch of trades that they are supposed to do, right? Who at the end of the day is accountable for those actions? Will be the AI agent, or will it be the user that is actually deploying those AI agents? I think that's not 100% defined yet. Maybe it's up to the agent. Kunal, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is an interesting problem to solve. That is where we are trying to see if you can inject an insurance. If you can inject an insurance system where if user is interacting, there is at least some risk management there. But at the end of the day, that is dilemma we are going to face. That is the dilemma we are facing at HeyElsa as well. If I am instructing to an AI agent, whether responsibility lies on the platform, AI agent or me, that is definitely a problem. But essentially, you want to make user understand that how crypto works, and I think again it's a chicken egg problem in that sense, where if I'm new to it, I'm going to blame the AI agent and platform I'm using, then what is underneath it. So yeah, that problem statement is definitely there. We are definitely not close to solving it.
This is, I think, was very accountability driven. What about in terms of security and transparency? What are those dimensions? How do they come in here? And well, maybe also it's an opportunity that this brings. I mean, very negative in the sense of challenges that we need to bear for. What are some of the opportunities it actually brings in those dimensions?
Yeah, so when it comes to transparency, like you want the agent's actions to be verifiable, as I think Nada mentioned in the panel before. That's super important, that you can verify that the agent is using a certain model and the actions it's doing are triggered by whatever thing it's meant to be triggered by. That's super important. And security, yeah, I mean, it comes down to like what the agent's interacting with, what protocols they're interacting with. Some people might only want to use an agent which interacts with like a lending protocol like Aave and maybe Morpho, and they don't want to use anything else. Or they only want to trade with an agent, or have a trading agent that uses Binance and Bybit and no other exchange. So I think, yeah, it all comes down to like the user's risk profile, what they're comfortable with. They might see higher yields if they go for a less secure option. They might see reduced yields with the most secure agents, but yeah.
Yeah, just to like dive deeper a little bit on the whole transparency requirement. You obviously want that so you have visibility into like what the agent is using under the hood, like let's say the model, right? But I guess to dive one level deeper, if you're a user, why do you actually care about that? You probably care about that because the model underneath the hood has some biases that you thought it didn't, that expose you to some opportunity costs that you would not have had if the model actually was using them, if the agent was using the model that you thought it was using, right? So just being a little bit more concrete in terms of like what the user impact would be.
And in terms of, so we discussed, obviously we are at a Web3 conference, so we discussed the implications on Web3 trading. What do you see in terms of bridging the gap towards traditional financing? Is there any advantages that these AI agents bring in terms of bridging that gap?
Hello. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, there are possibilities where if you are in TradFi institute or a TradFi fund manager, you want to definitely sort of get into an AI agent where it can give you right signals. Let's say RWA tokenization. What all possibilities are there? I want to understand from crypto perspective as well as I want to understand from real world perspective. And can AI agent sort of learn from all these signals and give me at least some short summary blurb that, okay, fine, if you want to put this much, this is the projection on certain things. I actually saw a use case recently where this RWA project based out of Singapore, these are all classical bankers, and they want to explore how, if RWA is the use case, can I take all the signals from whatever news item that are there in the market and see if I can build something around that, which in turn gives me output on, okay, this is the right way to build a fund here for this specific areas of RWA, and then tokenize it afterwards. So there is definitely an institutional play, but at the very simplistic level, even institutes wants to understand what crypto is, and you might find it funny, but those people want to have ChatGPT or chat-like interface where they can ask questions and get answers around what is blockchain, what is crypto, everything, and then take decisions based on that. I think in that direction, from simplicity to complexity, there is definitely an opportunity in the TradeFi space.
So the way we're kind of looking at it is we expect stocks. Hello? We expect like stocks to be fully on chain by the end of the year. I think we're already starting to see some protocols like hyperliquid adding stocks. So yeah, I think that's going to be the main way. Like you can't, like TradFi is way too slow for like a lot of things. So they're still like just getting to grips with DeFi. So like having them using AI agents for DeFi is not going to happen like quickly. So I think the best use case, or the best thing we can do is like try and build for when like agents for stocks coming on chain. So people can trade options and do things that they do normally, but they can do it on chain. So I think that's like a pretty big opportunity. And yeah, we're working on like a load of projects around that right now.
Yeah, I guess when I think of TradFi, on top of all the stuff that you guys said, was all the AI and ML stuff that has been built in the existing financial industry. They're really sophisticated models, right? So whether it's like fraud or like, I don't know, lending or like what have you, right? I'm super, super excited about the promise of that actually like, being realized for what on-chain activity could look like, because that is what drives a lot of economic activity in the real world. And unless you have verifiability of those models like on-chain somehow, you can't use those models at all, like in for on-chain protocols, right? And that's one piece of the puzzle. The other one, obviously, being privacy, but along that being worked on. I think once these two are in place, it'll like have like sizable effects.
Okay, we're almost at time. We have 3 minutes left, so I'd like for 1 minute each of you to give your predictions. It's always interesting, I think, for an audience. So number 1 is your prediction for end of the year, and then looking longer ahead, like 3 to 5 years, where are we? Given where we are now, the speed of how we're progressing, I think that could be really interesting. Your thoughts. Nima, you want to start?
I unfortunately don't think we're going to see as much progress, like mechanically, like in the frameworks and like the capabilities of these models towards the end of the year. But like over the next 5 years, we'll see a lot of that. So like, not as super bullish short term, but hella bullish long term. And I also think that people being prompted to then think about other prompts that they can give to agents, like agents prompting the human or the users to then like, kind of a more interactive dialogue. I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Maybe before you go, just a quick question. Why are you not so bullish on the speed? Like, why shouldn't it pick up rather than be more slower?
I mean, it's like it's just like historically, right? It's like you I think a lot of stuff is going to happen much more than it does in the short term, but then like in the long term, like
Makes sense. James, 2025 versus 2028, where are we?
I think the majority of transactions are going to be done by agents. People won't really use application interfaces that much. There'll be a load of new interfaces that people use, whether that's like natural language, whether it's like simple tools people can build themselves through, through like ChatGPT, Anthropic, whatever, Claude interfaces. I think that's going to run like the majority of people's strategies on chain.
Kunal?
Yeah. Against what Nima said, I'm a bit more bullish on this.
Great. I'm happy.
Of course, because HeyElsa is actually serving that sort of an audience. I think every DeFi protocol will essentially will have AI in some shape or form. Models are only going to get cheaper. That in turn will help companies like HeyElsa to serve users better. I think there is another interesting use case, if I really have to talk about it, is that across different geographies, as of now, the interface is just for those who are like very native to crypto, English speaking and all that. Essentially, eventually, I think there will be interfaces where you can speak in your own native tongue and buy crypto. I think we are pretty close to that. We actually solved it at HeyElsa. I think that is what I'm bullish on in short term, where second important thing is I'm bearish on this particular aspect where AI will solve complicated DeFi problems. I don't think that is going to be a case, because there are too many factors that crypto accounts for, and it's very today it's restaking, tomorrow it's something else, and that narrative catching is very hard. So that is one part of it which I think may not have that much implication on AI, but then simplistic use cases where I can buy crypto using my native tongue. I can have like a stable income coming through crypto, where if it is not like high yield but low yield, but I'm okay with that. And whatever yield I earn, I in turn use that yield to buy some things in real world, like from Amazon, whatever. I think this is one of the use cases that I'm pretty bullish on, simplistically. Yeah, that is what it is.
Okay, great. Thanks for your insights. I think we almost made it on time. Give it up for Nima from Eigen, James from Mode, Kuna from HeyElsa. My name is Sebastian, Possible Cloud Network, and we're here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.